People look at our map of the realm and think, Tolkien? And yeah, obviously there's plenty of influence there, but goodness, there is so much more, which they generally notice when they start seeing the 9 realms of Norse mythology. Once they see the village of Mustasheshire, though, they know they're not exactly on a form of Earth anymore, middle or otherwise. So let's start at the beginning. In the mythology, it first speaks of a spark in the cosmos named El, who heard stories floating through the void and created a world out of it. El means star in Cinder and Elvish, as it's a vaguely humanoid ball of glittering green light and literally made of star stuff. Most of the names of people and places in the realm are Elvish names, carefully chosen according to their translated meanings because we care enough to keep a 15,000 plus line file of all the permutations we could find to name properly. The map itself, the cropped version, did start with the general contours of the Middle-earth map. When the world started getting more elaborate, we decided we would have to map the whole thing, which is where the fun really got started. In our realm, we have 9 kingdoms named after the 9 realms of Norse mythology, stories of which surely must have been floating through the void to El's consciousness. How those kingdoms look and function isn't precisely lined up with Norse mythology, but the basics are there and split up into 3 lands: Shavehala, where the gods and elementals live, Maengard, where all the elves congregate, and Beardenheim, where the humanoids from giants to men dwell. The fun for us is in how those kingdoms interact when they're neighbors who don't require a Bifrost to get between them. After a couple of years of building this fantasy world and writing some of its mythology, we realized it would make a rather fun Dungeons & Dragons world to play in. I don't actively play D&D because I have zero fantasy rabbit hole self-control. Husband Tyler thankfully does, so he is the DM running the game and building the campaigns while I craft the world around it. So we continued building and writing with that angle and those mechanics in mind. Plenty of monsters and creatures to draw from in this world too, which of course led to far more spreadsheets and incarnate map making and world anvil world building. It's getting elaborate. These days we have an actual ongoing game, which we stream on Twitch and you can watch when we do. Be aware, lines like "I eat sushi at the Hag" have been uttered in all seriousness. Because the Realm of Beardsgaard is built out of the stories of our world, the references aren't contained to just the works of the grand linguist in Nordic myths. There are bits and pieces of nigh all the fantasy we've run across in our lives, from George R.R. Martin to Brendan Sanderson to C.S. Lewis and Peter S. Beagle and H.P. Lovecraft and Jacqueline Carey and Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett and countless more. Heck, it isn't even all fantasy. In-game, Hamish and Lizarin, the bumbling city guards that keep popping up everywhere, are heavily inspired by an Eddie Izzard movie about juvenile delinquents on a hike getting hunted by the Duke of Edinburgh. A lot of the things that happen at the top and bottom of the world, the places El didn't create very solidly, blossomed out of repeated viewings of Annihilation and The Ritual. Kevin the Rainbow-Flying Gerbil, who led the rodent rebellion of the year 999, originated in the mind of our 6-year-old as she sat atop a hammock at a barbecue and took a group of drunk adults through the wormhole to the Rainbow Land, holding all of them in rapture to her story. Plot holes and loose magical rules in fantasy make us absolutely crazy, which makes writing high fantasy a touch harder. Because if we're going to have a character who can trace his lineage back to the first created of each species, you can bet we're going to put together 1,000 years of that family tree so we can make sure the timeline for all the epic characters needed to make it happen is proper. Hence, the spreadsheets. And then there are things we make just because they're flippin' hilarious to us, like Mustasheshire, a village of halfling tailors where both genders have elaborate, exquisite facial hair. Hipster halflings, basically. There's an island that's not just a nudist colony. Clothes are banned entirely. Can't set foot on land unless you're naked. Shipwrecked? Tough titties. Strip or back to sea. And right in the middle of the whole thing, there's a tall tower at the top of a tall mountain set above a deep river called River Peak Apothecary, where an ancient crazed bearded wizard makes his potions for the denizens of the realm, as we do here in the real world, for actual work. And there you have it, the 2 not too hidden sides of the weirdo who got this ball rolling. A genderless sentient ball of glitter and a scatterbrained elderly bearded hermit. I know you'd probably think this guy is the elderly bearded hermit, but he's far too much of a social butterfly and young at heart for that. Plus he's obviously a dwarven master craftsman. Now that we have all this foundation to build on, a group of enthusiastic dweebs playing around in the world, and more products launching, which become map locations of course, the pace is picking up. We can't wait to see where the story takes us next, because despite the fact that we're writing it, we really have no idea. And that's half the fun. If you're a fantasy nerd who enjoys a little fourth wall breaking, please do boop that subscribe button. Every time you do, a gremlin finds a neat rock and lets out a gasp of joy. See you next time.